Okay, so in this video we're going to finish up by having Semi be able to look at the books on the table over here and have him respond to them. Just basically setting up what's called a hotspot in the room. The way that you do that is those are called hotspots. So I'm going to select hotspots from the drop-down list. By default, there are no hotspots in the room, but we want to create a hotspot out of this set of books. So the way that we do that is we just simply draw an object, a region around this set of books. And again, the best way to do this is to go into an editor, turn on layers, draw your hotspots. And I never said what to do at that point after you've drawn your regions in another editor. What you would do at that point, the way you would do that is you would just click on the import. I believe it's this one here. Import mask from file. So if you click on that, it'll bring up a dialog box. You can select a file that contains it's called a mask, but basically it would be just the areas that are colored of the regions that you want, and then you could just import that directly into the editor, and it would just kind of put that on top of your screen here. But we'll just do what we're doing from AGS's editor, because we're not trying to be too precise and too detailed here. So what we want to do is we want to create a hotspot around the books, and it's up to you how closely you outline the books. I could be very precise and outline every pixel around the books, but I don't really want to do that for a couple of reasons. Number one, it would take a while, but number two, if I just kind of have a loose outline like I'm doing here, and let me fill that in, what that avoids to a certain extent what they call pixel hunting in these kind of games, where you have to click on exactly the right area to get the desired effect in the game. I mean, if the character clicks over in this general area, in fact, we may even want to expand the general area a little bit farther. Whereas if the player clicks anywhere within this general area, we might want to assume that they were clicking on the books and not make them click on each exactly precisely the set of books, bounding rectangle or what have you. So in this case, even if they click outside here or over here a little bit where this blue area is, it'll still get the reaction that we want from the books. So we have this area here. Now we want to assign, again, an event to this area, just like we did with the rooms. Well, we have the hotspot ID 1, and you can see that there's many more hotspots you can have in the room. In this particular room, there's actually 50 of them you can have in any particular room. So we go over to events on that hotspot, and now we can see, I'm going to expand this out a little bit so we can see what these say. Any click on hotspot, so this event will happen obviously on any click, no matter what mode the cursor is in. Or you can do individual modes like interact, look at. If the mouse moves over the hotspot, maybe you want something to happen. If you try to pick up the hotspot, if you stand on the hotspot, talk to the hotspot, use an inventory on the hotspot, and this will you have to put in the code as far as which inventory item you used. It would react differently depending on which inventory item you used. And then a user mode 1 and user mode 2. AGS allows different two user modes, custom user modes. For example, maybe you want to have a smell icon on your mouse, or maybe you want to have a taste, kind of like the Space Quest games from Sierra did. So you could do those for using these user mode 1 and user mode 2. But what we want to do is we want an event to fire when he looks at the hotspot. So we click on the ellipses just like before. And now this has taken us back to our room editor, and it's added a hotspot 1 look. I should have named this hotspot before I did that. In fact, let me do that. I'm gonna delete out. I'm just gonna erase this function that it created here, because I don't want that to say hotspot 1. I want that to say books, and I meant to name that. So I'm just gonna delete this stuff that it did for me. And before I create on the event this time, I'm gonna call this H books. H standing for hotspot, and then books. Now the description, I'm just gonna say books. You could say books on shelf, or what have you, whatever's the easiest way for you to look at that. Now I'm going to go over to the events. I'm going to say, if you look at the event, and now this says H books look. So this is just a little bit more descriptive in the function name that it creates. So now when you look at the books, let's have Sammy .say again, and say, I believe in Sammy's quest he said something about looks like there's a book on rat recipes there. So it looks like there's a book on rat recipes there. Let's just have him say that. And again, you just end with a close parentheses and semicolon, excuse me, just like we did before. And just to make sure it works, let's compile and run the game. Okay, so if I click on the look icon and click on the books, he says, looks like there's a recipe on rat recipes there. So that's good, that's what we want. And notice if we click on anything else, if we click the hand, interact on there, it doesn't do anything. Talk doesn't do anything. Of course, walk will do something. But none of the other things do anything because we haven't created custom events for those particular things. Well, let's have it do one more thing. Let's say that if Sammy looks at it, not only does he say something, but let's just say he walks over to that area. So what we want to do is say see Sammy dot walk, and now we give it. It wants several parameters now. It wants an X and a Y location. Where do we want Sammy to walk to? Well, we have to kind of figure that out. If we kind of drag our mouse around and kind of say we want him to walk where his feet are where my mouse cursor are, so about right here. And we look at the top here where the mouse position is, and that's about position 55, 127. X is 55, Y is 127. So we can go back into here and say 55 for X and 127 for Y. Now this is saying block or no block. That's what it wants for this next parameter. Block means that nothing else in the game can happen. Basically it gives us an hourglass mouse cursor, and all scripting halts at that point. So the script sort of waits for him to get to that point before it continues. Or if we select no block, it's kind of like he's walking in the background and the user can still do other things while he's walking. In this case, we want it to block. We don't want him to say the. In other words, we don't want this next line to happen until he gets to this spot. And now, do you want him to walk anywhere, or do you want him to obey the walkable areas? Well, we want him to obey the walkable areas here, so we don't want him to walk on the walls to get there. And so that's really all you have to do. So now Sammy's going to walk there, and the script is going to halt right here because of this block. It's going to halt right here until Sammy gets to 55, 127, and then at that point he's going to say, "It looks like there's a recipe on a book on rat recipes here." So let's see how that works. So if I click on look, it should all happen. So now he's walking over there. Notice I have an hourglass cursor, and then he says, "Looks like there's a recipe on there's a book on rat recipes here." I don't know how he knows that because he's shorter than the table is. I guess he's looking up at him. Boy, Sammy is awful short. I guess I've never noticed that before. So anyway, so that's how you would do that kind of thing. And then you could define a region or a hotspot. I'm sorry, for the vase. You might want to define a hotspot for the table. In the game, we had all kind of them. We had one for the banister. We had one for the stairs. We had one for each one of these pictures on the wall. And all these were hotspots. We had one for the hook on the wall here, for the walls, for the floor, for the trap door. And each one of those things then would behave differently. When you look at the pictures, you might want him to say, I think he said something about those are my relatives hanging on the wall. So, you can obviously do a customized action for every single thing in the room. So that's really what I wanted to cover in this video. Oh, and I do want to mention one more thing. In Sammy's Quest, we have basically the narrator is Sammy, and what I mean by that is whenever you click on something and look at something, Sammy is the one that tells you about that object. So Sammy is talking to you. But let's just say you wanted it to be traditional, like traditional Sierra games. Typically, the character didn't respond to you. You had sort of a narrator, an unseen narrator that responded to you when you looked at certain things in the game, and it wasn't the main character. So let's just say we wanted to have that type of game instead of having the character interact with you. So I'm going to comment out this line by just putting 2 slashes in it. So now Sammy's not going to say anything anymore. And I'm going to drop down to the next line. And then you have a function called display. And what that will do is that will display a message. So you can say display, and then I'm going to say there is a recipe on rat recipes. Why do I keep doing that? There is a book on rat recipes here. In that case, we also, since the narrator's saying it, we don't really need Sammy to walk over there at that point, so I'll comment out that line too. Basically, if I comment out the line by putting 2 slashes in front of it, that just turns that into a comment. The parser ignores it. So when I run the game now, and I click on look over here, now instead of Sammy saying it, it's a sort of a message that gets displayed in the middle of the screen saying there's a book on rat recipes here, and then we can click to get rid of that message. So just really quickly, that's how you would do that if you didn't want Sammy to interact with you all the time. All right, well, I'll see you in the next video. I'm about out of time on this one.